Hi everyone, Maza here and welcome to this deck review. So I'm a big Mufasa player, although I prefer Steel Fasa. RedFasa is also something I really enjoy playing, and lately I've been experimenting with it because I've been seeing some promise with it. However, there's been a sort of consensus around the community, mostly around the Humble builds. So Humble is an American player and he has a build that is pretty well established, and most people that gravitate towards RedFasa tend to at least start with his build. So he's using 3 Maleficents, 2 Big Sisus, 4 Stitch Carefree Surfers and 2 Mulans, as well as some removal with Lady Tremaine and Judy Hopps to make those characters, to protect some of the characters at the end of the turn, as well as Raya, either to protect characters or give double value to someone like Gaston for the ramp. So there's nothing particularly wrong with this build works, but I've been increasingly trying to experiment with the cards. So in this series I will over time experiment different builds, taking established prototypes and then switching a few cards around and really trying to see if there are some more optimized ways or some better ways. Sometimes a player comes around in these tournaments that using a card that surprises everyone, and mostly because no one thought about using it. So why not apply that same principle and try to give some innovation and try to see if RedFasa can be better in terms of performance. So the major problems I see with this is that Mulan is too inconsistent. Mulan Elite Archer is a great card, of course, so she gets +3 when you shift her, and then when she challenges in that same turn, hopefully you can hit not only just one target but also 2 extra targets, so it's a potential 3 for 1, and usually when it works, it really works. However, with just the Mulan Imperial Injured Soldier at the 1 cost slot, usually you don't see both of them. First, you don't want to see this in the mid to late game. It's too weak of a card. And then just 2 Mulan Elite Archers are not enough to be able to actually take full advantage of the card. Of course, the card is here to pose a threat. If people see Mulan Injured Soldier, they know there's a possibility of the shift line, so they have to take that into account. And that's also why Elite Archer is a threat. But it's also situational. The deck isn't made around her, just like it's not made around Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon or Big Sisu. 2 other cards that more often than not I found Big Sisu. I like the smaller Sisu, the medium one here, the Emboldened Warrior, to actually make the shift. And a lot of times, if my opponent successfully deals with Gaston, I like the ink to be able to play Sisu, so I get stuck in my hand with an inkable. At the same time, sometimes I do have the medium Sisu, but I don't see the Big Sisu because it's only a 2-of. Finally, Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. What I found is that basically, aside from lucky Mufasa flips, and that's why the card is there, it's either ink, or when you get to play it, it's either you already won and you don't need it, or you already lost and it's pointless. So taking that into consideration and the fact that the overall game is faster, I wanted to build a deck around Mulan Elite Archer to be able to see, okay, can this card taken to its fullest potential actually succeed in making the deck more viable? For that, of course, I took a few cards out and I changed a few cards. So in terms of the build, I'm still obviously running Injured Soldier. It's great, and it's great synergy with card soldiers. I'm running 3 Lumiere to give that +1 strength boost to every character on the board. Really important. Also manages some of these cards to avoid being brawled, for example, or Big Sisuit. Of course, Mother Gothel with the damage in order to get those Rapunzel heals off. So one of my first big tech cards is Baloo. So Baloo is a bodyguard, it's a 0-3, and when he's banished he gains you two lore. Now this card from my testing works better in DeckQuest as the DeckQuest versions are much faster. DeckQuest essentially has evolved. You can play it more like a mid-range deck, and I was playing it in one of the previous videos when I was in Paris at the LCQ. I did play it as more of a mid-range deck, but newer builds actually play DeckQuest even more aggro, so it's a sort of Ember Steel aggro that works really well with Baloo, because every time the opponents want to either challenge your high lore characters, they need to give you 2 lore because they need to go over Baloo, or if they use some sort of board wipe, they will pay for the board wipe with 2 lore. But I'm still a fan of the card, but I'm considering it in the next RedFasa build, maybe taking it out and seeing how that does, because like I mentioned, it's much better in a faster DeckQuest build. So for Gaston, for the ramp, we need those free inks in order to play our big characters, and this is one of the other big tech cards. I didn't want to just depend on Mulan Injured Soldier. She's probably not in the board, you don't want to see her very late game, and by using Mulan Free Spirit at the 3 cost, as a 3 cost, even if you don't play her as a 3 slot, because that's the Gaston, you give more chances for Mulan Elite Archer, which we are running 4 of, in order to enter play. But she also has several other advantages. First, with 3 willpower she doesn't get stormed, or fire the cannons, or Baboom, or any of those cards. She still quests for 2, so you manage to get a pretty good lore pressure on the board. And she has support, and let me tell you, this card actually overperformed, but not in the ways I was thinking. So the support, the +2 attack that she gave other cards occasionally came really in handy, although the overall experiment with the Mulan Elite Archer was still inconsistent, and I'm still convinced that it's not worth to run 4 of, and I probably will try to have builds without her in order to place other cards that I think might be more consistent in the overall game plan. But I did get an appreciation for the capability of boosting the attack, and I think that will be in my mind when I further make future builds of this deck. Pongo, of course, is another sort of card draw, because when he's once per turn you can pay 2 ink and you can check the top card of your deck. If it's a character, put it on your hand. This has the double advantage that this is not considered a draw, so Diablo isn't triggered by this, and there's a lot of Diablo running around at the moment between green steel and green purple, for example. So Pongo is a useful card also, although with 2 willpower he does die very fast. Rapunzel is obviously a given, of course, gifted with healing, the card that makes Ember decks work. I'm running 3 Super Goof. Again, my proposal for this, and I'm always looking in these Mufasa decks for alternate sources of lore. So since we don't run songs, or usually don't run songs, and most other decks have either limited removal or wide removal, I want ways where I can win the game from my hand, or win the game without the opponent expecting it. For example, Raya is a card that if Goofy didn't die on the first challenge, he can make him ready again, and he can challenge again, and that's 4 lore in a single turn. Even if he dies, he gained you 4 lore, it's totally fine. And it's a card that I think is really useful, particularly because usually with the 2 strength he's a bit on the weak side. However, boosted by Lumiere, or boosted by Mulan Free Spirit, he becomes a real threat in that he can remove several cards without actually dying because of his 4 willpower. So another one of the tech cards I used was Moana Island Explorer, since she has evasive and there's a lot of evasive running around on the meta at the moment, with 4 attack, a considerable amount of strength, and 3 willpower, and the capability when she challenges a character to give a +3 strength boost to another character. So again, increasing the range that our other characters have of actually dealing with the opponent's board. Prince Eric is a card I've always been a big fan of. It's also it's a real annoying card for the opponent to deal with, because he quests for 2, and even though he's weak, if they want to remove him, they will lose a character of their own. So the only real problem is the price and the fact that he's an inkable, which is why he's only a 2-of. So next, I'm running, I've been going back and forth between running 3 Raya or 2 Raya. In this case I'm running 2 Raya, and this card is really good because once per turn we put a card on the inkwell and she can make another character ready. You can use that to protect cards from your opponent's challenges after they did something, like questing, or you can use her, for example, to use Gaston, which has an ability that can be triggered, use him twice in a single turn and get a 4 ink discount on characters. So it's a really useful card. Of course, the king is here, Mufasa can't miss this deck, the Betrayed Leader, the meta is increasingly faster, so this card has become increasingly, I wouldn't say harder to play, but slower to play and more expensive than it should be. So maybe in the future, I love the Mufasa, the effect that Mufasa has. Maybe in the future they can print a sort of updated Mufasa, especially if we consider the rumors around set rotation, which would mean this Mufasa from Rise of the Floodborn, the second set, would be out of the rotation. Maui Hero to All is, everyone knows what a great card this is, right? You can rush with a massive 6 strength out of the hand, very useful to deal with hidden coves, other types of locations, Neverland, and also, even though it doesn't kill Manor or the library, it does put most of the damage that you need in order to banish those locations. So one of the other tech cards that I was using in this deck is Hydra Deadly Serpent. Because of all the steel that is running around, whenever this character is dealt damage, deal that much damage to chosen opposing character. So it's not like Eric where he gets banished and you can banish an opponent, but all the steel removal is based around damage. So whenever he gets damaged, you will be able to damage your opponent's characters, or basically you can also challenge with him, and he not only deals that damage, but the damage that the opposing character gives him, he can also deal to another character. Lady Tremaine, of course everyone knows this. I'm running a 3-2 package with Tremaine and Medusa, always coming handy. The aforementioned Mulan Elite Archer, very powerful card, but what I found during most of these matchups, and this I'm talking about the matchups, I'm in this series with experimenting with different decks and different builds of decks. I will always do 20 matches. These were best of 1, not best of 3. But I found the majority of the matches she actually wasn't able to actually shift and challenge successfully, either because I didn't have the smaller Mulans, or I had the smaller ones and I didn't have the big one, or my opponents were running evasive and she's not evasive, or if my opponents aware of the threat because they had already seen me, for example, ink a big Mulan, they weren't actually turning their characters. So in these 20 matches, I think I got 12 or 13 Mulan Elite Archers shift lines actually successfully, and they didn't really make a huge impact, because several times I did it, I still lost the game. So as I said earlier, I don't think it's worth it to run 4 of. Of course, I was running a bit, I was playing a bit different. In total, this is, if I'm not mistaken, let me check, 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 11. So this is basically 11 wins, 9 losses. Every time the green is a win, red is a loss. I was playing differently. I was basically actually trying to force the shift and force playing the Mulans, which is not ideal, but I wanted to really give the card a real test, a real tryout, and I don't think it's worth it. And I'm gonna test versions even with not running the 2 of that, for example, is seen in a lot of other RedFasa lists. Finally, while I don't have anything bigger than Stitch Carefree Surfer, this is another one of our draw engines. As long as we have 2 other cards, you play him and he draws you 2 other cards, plus he's a 4/8, he's a big body, he quests for 2, and it's always problematic for the opponent to get rid of Stitch Carefree Surfer. So now that I've talked about the deck, let's go over the matchups here that we have. Basically, the first match was a loss, and I played against the Amber Amethyst Evasives deck. It was while not exactly like this deck, it was something similar. It was running the Peter Pan Shadow Finder that is gaining increasingly in popularity now. It was running Pascal, and this card is really problematic for to face for a lot of decks, because you can't touch him. He quests for 3 and he doesn't die to 2 damage. It was also running Iago, and it was running a few additional evasives as well. It was a full-on evasives deck, really hard to handle. And even though I tried to use removal and most of the options that I had available, it's a bit on an aggro side, even though it's not full on aggro. So it's fast and it's evasive and it's hard to deal with. However, the next 2 games were a win. I played the blue steel mid-range deck, which was slow, or at least it matched my speed, so I was very able to deal with it. The first of several Steel Song matchups that I won, and if Steel Song doesn't manage to actually kill the game right at the beginning, then it becomes increasingly harder, especially with these big bodies, especially putting Hydra on the board. Now, I've mentioned Hydra. I didn't find her that useful, to be honest. Obviously not all decks are Steel Song decks or all Steel decks. I played a lot of decks which weren't Steel, but I didn't find the card particularly useful, and I'm probably not gonna run it in the future. There just weren't enough situations where running it and its ability and the fact that it's an inkable justifies its presence in the deck. Funnily enough, the 4th game was a defeat. It was a RedFasa mirror, but this player was actually using Big Sisus and crucially was using Be Prepared, and the game was sort of like deadlocked until he successfully used the Big Sisu. Go figure. I'm not using the card and I don't like to use the card, and then I get defeated by the card. It's these sorts of situations that really make you think that maybe I should run the card. But yeah, it was an interesting game, but as soon as he put down the Big Sisu, it was over. But I did find it interesting that he was running at least one Be Prepared. That's all I saw. Next was Red Blue Popsicles. It wasn't the DKP version with the heavy emphasis on the sharks and the actions. It was a more traditional version, and I managed to basically get the game to a point where I think the game ended. He had 19 lore but couldn't put that extra peep of lore, and I managed to win the game. Next one of the worst matchups I've found for RedFasa is the green steel decks. So I played against Emerald Steel Floodborns and Emerald Steel Discard. The Floodborns was the typical Chief Bogo build with a lot of Floodborns. Still had Diablo, and that was my major concern. All across this list, I'm not gonna necessarily go through every game one by one. All across this list, I played 3 times against green steel and I lost all 3. And the main emphasis, even though I have several banishers, even though I have 4 Moana Island Explorer with evasive, basically it was really hard to counter the Diablos. And I lost the games due to massive card advantage, even the Emerald Steel Floodborns version. It's very hard at a certain point, even if you put up a big fight, to deal with the fact that your opponent has drawn like 10, 12 extra cards than you. And especially if you're not running Big Sisu in order to deal with the low strength characters that make you discard. I had a defeat against a DKP version of Red Blue, and that was actually the last time I played Red Blue in the entire list. Then I went on a 6-game streak playing several Steel Song decks, and again, even though particularly one of those matches was really hard to deal with the more aggro nature, it was a really aggro Steel Song build. At a certain point, these big characters become hard to deal with. If they don't win the game in the first few turns, then it becomes an uphill battle for them. And also dealt, using my experience with that earlier Amber Amethyst Evasives deck, I actually played several Amethyst Ruby Evasives builds, which are growing really popular right now. So these builds are not, they don't necessarily need to be exactly like this, right? But they're usually running Pegasus, running Peter Pan Shadowfinder, running Genie, running Yago, running Elsa. So there's a lot of evasive action in these decks. It becomes hard to deal with, but at the same time, since we also have several banishers and really powerful creatures, and we quest for faster than them, these are winnable games, and it's not as difficult as the Amber Amethyst version. Then I went on a 3-game loss streak. First, I lost that one of those evasives, red-purple evasives deck. Again, a very contested game, but I wasn't able to actually in the end stretch remove his characters in time. Another green steel defeat, where basically I had no chance. I had a bad draw even after the mulligan, and kept drawing cards which were bad. You'll notice I was running 16 Uninkables. That was another experiment, and 16 Uninkables is too much. So I didn't really have a good hand, and sort of was stuck in my hand with a lot of expensive and uninkable cards. And my opponent had the perfect hand for green steel, so he totally destroyed me. The next one was pretty much the same. I had no chance in this Amber Steel Song, the 17th game, this matchup. I think it's the only loss I had against Steel Song. Again, I saw a bad hand, a bad mulligan, too many Ninkables, and my opponent had the perfect hand, and critically, whenever I thought I was gonna return to the game, he had the whole new world to get him back, to really push him further and make a super wide board that I had no chance to deal with. The next one was Amber Steel Dwarf's Mine. Since it's a slower deck, less emphasis on the songs, it's not hard to deal with, especially with Maui destroying the mines, Maui or Hydra destroying the mines. And finally, I played 2 red-purple bounces, 1 victory, 1 defeat. Both games really contested, and my opponent in that last game, the 20th game, the defeat, he was really he showed a mastery of, he had a great draw, but also showed a really great mastery of when to bounce, when to quest, when not to quest, when to challenge, and it was definitely a very skilled player. So in conclusion, I think RedFasa can deal pretty well with most of the field. I didn't play any, for example, green-blue. It would be an interesting matchup. I think RedFasa can deal with most of the field. I do think some of the options, I'm gonna change the deck and I'm gonna give another different build. Again, always different from the standard build. I want to test different cards out. RedFasa is definitely on the slow side. If they deal with Gaston, it's a bit of a problem. The inkable count needs to come down, and we need better ways to deal with evasives. I'm gonna experiment putting the red Pegasus, right? I'm not sure if this card. I'm gonna put this card on the deck as well to be able to deal with evasive faster, especially Diablos. I'm wondering if it would be adequate to run 2 or 3 brawls again to deal with Diablos and early evasive threats. I'm gonna take the Blues out and test that out. Obviously the Mulans will be out, all the Mulans will be out, and I'm still tinkering with the build to see exactly which type of version. If I want to try to go for a RedFasa build that is as fast or faster than Steel Fasa, what are the pros and what are the cons in that? Or if I want to make one of these big heavy builds but with different cards to test them out. So hopefully I hope you enjoyed the first video in this series to test out different decks. Give me some feedback, comment down below which decks you would like me to test next in terms of rogue decks or very different versions of popular decks. Suggest cards down below for me to build those decks around those cards. And I'll see you next time. Maza over and out.